So thank you guys for taking the time to attend our session this afternoon. So I'm going to turn it over shortly to Andy Cinoman, who's going to share some information with us that he has gleaned from the Entering Student Survey, and talk about some evidence-based strategies that we can use to help positively impact our students. We also have Brad Hinaus. Did I say that right, Brad? I should have asked.
It's Highness, but that's okay.
Highness. I'll never get that right. I'm sorry. Brad Highness from physics, who has implemented some of the things that Andy's going to mention, just to sort of share his experiences and what he's observed, good, bad, or otherwise, during that time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy.
All right. Good to see everybody today. Again, for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Andy Cinoman. I'm the Director of Student Retention, and I'm out of University College. And give me just a second. I'm going to share my screen here. I have a presentation that I want to share. Hopefully everybody can see that. Looks like everybody can. And I'm going to take a few minutes to share some information that Jackie Guthrie, who is an assistant director in the Academic and Career Advising Center, and I shared around purpose-first strategies for helping our most vulnerable students be successful on our campus, along with some information from the Entering Student Survey that I conducted. So I'm going to move quick and apologize in advance for whipping through a lot of information. But again, I think the slides will be available. I'm always available for follow-up. Love chatting about my work and what we're doing around retention programs and services and persistence issues and the like. Be happy to chat with you. All right, there we go. So let me do this. That's better for me. There we go. Okay. So again, I implemented an Entering Student Survey for all incoming students starting last summer. We're almost heading into the next iteration of the survey. And all new students had a chance to share with us their vision, expectations, concerns, and thoughts about the challenges they might face as they enter the university. So what I wanted to do to contextualize the conversation today is share some information that, having disaggregated the data that were shared by underrepresented minoritized student populations that came into the university last fall. And just a few quick data points. Again, I'm going to go through them very quickly. And these are some things that really stood out to me. The first being the income disparity between our URM and majority populations is really key to look at. Self-reported family income disparities between minoritized and majority students. That's really important to keep in mind as we have this conversation. Our students of color stated that they're more focused on graduate and professional school and gaining entry into professional school and gaining hands-on experience for the world of work than were our majority students. And we'll keep that one in mind too, moving forward here. Our URM students really wanted to build community through meeting people with similar major and career interests. And this was different than our majority students who tended to look for individuals who share their hobbies and their personal interests outside of the classroom. Our minoritized populations were much more likely to say they were going to seek out academic support, personal support, but notice how they talked about approaching professors to work on research in regard to our majority populations. In general, minoritized populations expressed more concern, and in particular, concern about their mental health, developing the appropriate college level skills to be successful, balancing a part-time job with their studies, which ties back to the very first bullet point, and handling academic rigor in comparison to majority students, and expressed less confidence than did a majority students in the ability to adjust to academic demands, be successful in college, do well academically, communicate effectively. There were a number of areas where minoritized populations didn't feel as confident as white students or majority students. So I wanted to lay that out as context and talk a little bit about this notion of purpose first. Because in the mid-2010s, 7 or 8 years ago, Wisconsin had a post-secondary degree attainment rate of about 47%. And so in connection with the Wisconsin Technical College system, with the support of other state agencies, there was a resolution created to pursue a goal of 60% of students attaining a credential by the mid-2020s. And this eventually got folded into the latest system-wide strategic plan for 2023 to 2028, which is articulates the need to close the achievement gap and to produce more grads that are ready for the workforce. So as a part of the way to achieve these goals, the system partnered with Complete College America. You may be familiar with CCA, but their mission and vision is to really support institutional transformation, structural transformation, changing policy, changing pedagogical practice, to improve student success in higher education. Very broadly defined, very high level institutional mission. They want to help systems reimagine higher education. And so the goal is to be engines of equity, prosperity, and hope, rather than maintaining gaps or that reflect racial, social, and economic injustice in society. So this particular paper I have on the screen, called College on Purpose, it articulates a set of recommendations to help universities create a framework of early, major, and career experiences that can be woven into prospecting, recruiting, admission, application, and the first year to help students find programs of study that are the best fit with their interests and abilities academically, and to better understand how to use their degrees and what their career options might be that really energize them. That hence the term purpose first. Also, there's a major focus around the skills and experiences we want them to develop in order to prepare for the world of work. So essentially, adopting a purpose-first mindset or strategy can help new students solidify optimal major and career choice early on, as early as possible, to connect what they're learning as a, let's say, as a first semester or second semester student to their future. Right. So I would encourage you to browse the summary. It does include a set of classroom-specific recommendations around adopting purpose-first mindset. For example, just a few quick things. One of them might be articulating, perhaps in a course for the major, program outcomes. How can we explore personal interests in the classroom? How can we provide salary data or career availability and how you can use a particular major? How do they know they're in the right major, right? What are they going to be doing in other courses? What are they going to learn about? Does that fit what they thought it was going to be? And we all know students oftentimes think the major is one thing. What they're going to do in the major is one thing, and what they actually do and what they're going to have to learn, a lot of math, for example, or a lot of calculating, or a lot of writing, and that's not my jam, so not a good fit, and they struggle. And so that goodness of fit is key in helping the students. The sooner they find out that connection, the better. So, another strategy that's brought up is providing clearly articulated learning outcomes for assignments and how assignments can help them be career ready, literally down to the level of the assignment. Students that will always ask, why do I need to take this gen ed course? Or why do I need to take this course in my major? Why do I have to take more math? So explaining the why of it is a definite purpose-first strategy. Another piece is early experiential learning and weaving in opportunities to get out in the community and apply what they learn in the community back to what they're learning in the classroom. So a number of pieces there. And again, a lot of stuff very quickly. So if you, to the degree that you can review that summary or the original document, it's very well written. Now, since I mentioned the need to share how particular courses and assignments will help them become career ready, I wanted to share the National Association for Colleges and Employers, that's NACE, N-A-C-E, their competencies for a career ready workforce. And here they are. This is really a published list of what employers say they need in college educated employees for them to be successful. And of course, their businesses to be successful or agencies. And of course, our students, and they tell us this right at the front, that they want to be employable. They're coming to college to get those skills that they need. And these competencies are a critical piece that can unlock their future career. So we're not talking vocational training. Really, these are components of the educational process that are already the foundation for a bachelor's degree and the foundation of a liberal education in some cases. But all too often, we're really not transparent with our students about the importance of developing competencies that are going to help them succeed in the world of work. It's really just connecting the dots between what we already do, giving it a name, and connecting it to their future that really will help them realize the importance of the different pieces of what they're learning in their degrees. So that transparency is going to be key. So, you know, take a little bit of time and think about your work and where you excel at providing competency work in your courses or other experiences, and where there's other areas that you might be more intentional. Now, as we look at this information through a broader lens, developing a purpose-first strategy is really all about developing a set of retention strategies that increase the likelihood that our students, and in particular, our most vulnerable populations of students who leave the institution in larger numbers than other students, low-income students, first-generation students, commuter students, minoritized populations, thinking about how we can get them to persist from term to term until they earn their degree. So, you know, taking steps to ensure that our students find a major that fits and have opportunities to connect their major to career fields is really an important part of the process. And that's been shown to reduce persistence and degree achievement gaps. But it's only part of the story, because an additional critical piece of the retention puzzle that yields persistence is a feeling of belonging and mattering. And so a few pieces from other surveys that I've conducted, in particular, a new student survey, follow-up in the fall, and a withdrawal survey after the fall semester, show a couple of interesting pieces. Our first-year students shared that the most impactful reason why they left the university was a feeling of loneliness and lack of connection, and a feeling they didn't belong here. Now, I mentioned a new student survey. It was really the same thing as the entering student survey. It's more of a follow-up. In their first semester, only 17% of new students felt like they were successful in getting to know their professors. And about 1 in 4 felt they were successful at being a part of the university community. And about 4 in 10 felt they were successful in understanding their expectations of their faculty. So those kinds of things are important to keep in mind. And so you can see belonging and mattering. There's a role of what happens in the classroom. And so I wanted to share just a few suggestions. And these are primarily learned through 30 years of working with students in transition into the university setting and teaching first-year seminars and working with students before, during, and after their transition about how to foster belief that they belong in college, they belong here at Point, that they can meet the challenges of being successful college students, and they can achieve their goals for earning a degree. And again, none of these are earth-shattering, but you know, and you may be using them already. I never make any assumptions about what individuals know and what they don't know, but I wanted to share what I've learned. So just a few quick pieces here. I always focus on being approachable, and that personal interactions matter. And we talked in January about changing the title of office hours to a student hour. Our first generation students, new students don't understand what office hours mean. They're not sure they're welcome there. And so reimagining it as a student hour and requiring they come and see you, even for 5 minutes, just to talk a little bit about yourself, ask them a few questions. Perhaps you do this before class begins, and it will help them get over the hump in asking questions before and after class. They are terrified. They are terrified of you. That you don't mean them. We don't want them to be. They're terrified and anxious of being in college. And a lot of them, it's the first class they've taken, first time they've been in the college classroom, and that necessity to help them relax and exhale is really important. So that element of humanization, the fact that, yep, you have a life outside of your work, and you have hobbies and things that you do, to the degree that you share and ask them questions about what they did over the weekend or the best thing that happened to them last weekend, share it yourself. One of the first things I learned to do was talk more about myself, and who I was and what I enjoyed doing, and how I spent my time, so I could connect with them and vice versa. Exhibiting care and sharing in your actions and expressing it at different points in the term that you know how they're feeling. I can tell by the looks on your faces that tell me how you're feeling right now. Are you anxious? Are you overwhelmed? Are you excited? Do you understand what's happening here? Tell me a little bit about what's going on, and that it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this together. And I understand you might be a little overwhelmed with the speed at which we're going, the information that I'm expecting you to know. But let's do a check-in now and then, and gives you an opportunity to share that you know what it's like and you remember, and that how they're feeling is normal. These are really important things. I've used a lot of strategies over the years to get everybody in the classroom to engage, even the introverts. The extroverts will always raise their hand. They'll always share. But I use techniques like think, pair, share. I even in large classes might ask a question and might have them pair up with a neighbor, jot a few things down on paper, and then come back. And I go all around the room and make everybody share. They know everyone's going to share and everyone has a voice. You can hear some, and their peers can hear some really important things by individuals who might otherwise not think that what they have to share is important, or valuable. They don't often think that they should be the ones telling everybody else an answer or a thought. So it's important to allow everyone to engage. I think a critical piece is learning how to learn. Learn how to learn. We're going to quickly transition here in just a second to talk about transparency and learning how to learn. But they need to learn how to take notes in your courses, how to read a college level textbook, to study effectively for an exam or a quiz in your course. And frankly, students tell us they're expecting it to come from their instructors. And that's really important to keep in mind. One example that I've done over the years is to lecture for 10 or 15 minutes and let them take notes. And then I would stop and I would ask them a few questions. Can you answer them based on what you took down? Why or why not? And these are things that you should be able to answer if you're taking notes that will help you study, right? Because you have to study differently at this level. And that 15 or 20 minutes might help the light bulb go on and make all the difference, helping them ask you follow-up questions or come to you during a student hour and ask some questions about whether their notes are appropriate or not. And finally, tilting. Tilting your classroom means providing transparency in teaching and learning. You may be familiar with this model, and providing that transparency of purpose and tasks and criteria of evaluation so students know what's expected of them, right? That really can make an enormous difference in their feelings of belonging, their understanding of the material, their comfort level, and of course, their success. So I'm going to run a video here, and hopefully this will work, that explains TILT from the originator of this pedagogical practice. And then I'm going to turn it over to Brad, and he can share a little bit about what he's done this semester to begin to enact some of these pieces. So let's cross our fingers and hope this works. So I'm going to say.
Andy, I don't think your sound is coming through. If you reshare, sorry, I'm Googling instructions to remember how to do this. When you go to share, there should be an option to share your audio as well. There should be like a checkbox.
Oh.
So I think you'll have to stop your share and then reshare.
Oh, okay. Let me pause it.
Yep. So when you go to share screen,
share sound. There it
yep,
is.
bottom left hand.
Sorry about that, everybody. Let me go back a little bit here.
And Problem-Centered Learning was an Association of American Colleges and Universities study funded by TG Philanthropy in the academic year 2014-2015. It involved 7 minority-serving institutions, and the co-investigators were Tia Brown McNair and Ashley Finley from the AAC&U, and myself, Mary Ann Winklemas, founder of the TILT Higher Education Project, Transparency in Learning and Teaching. Our hypothesis beginning this project depended on prior research by Tia McNair and Ashley Finley at the AAC&U and by the Transparency in Learning and Teaching in Higher Education Project. To combat the problem of losing large numbers of underserved students who drop out of college in the first year, we thought we could combine both problem-centered learning and transparent instruction in this project to benefit underserved student success. As a reminder, problem-centered learning engages students in exploring relevant, real-world, sticky problems and engaging their critical thinking skills around those. Transparent instruction focuses not just on the what of a course content, but on how students are learning that, and on why teachers have structured their learning experiences in particular ways. Our research question looked like this. We wanted to know what would be the effect if teachers used 2 problem-centered, transparently designed assignments in the course of a semester. And we would look to results like students' academic confidence levels, their sense of belonging in college, their awareness of the skills they were building, and the quality of their work. The way we implemented the project was this. Across the 7 minority-serving institutions, we had teams of faculty, 35 faculty in all, and a group of about 1,800 students. Each faculty member was teaching 2 sections of the same course. In one section, we asked the faculty to teach all the same assignments in exactly the way they were accustomed to doing. And in the other section, we asked the faculty to pull out 2 assignments, just 2, and to revise them, to make them more transparent and more problem-centered. Why 2? Well, we wanted to look at the impact of what a small intervention, a small, doable adjustment could make for students' success. The way we combined the transparency and the problem-centered was by using this template from the Transparency in Learning and Teaching project. We asked the faculty and instructors who were revising those 2 assignments in one section of their course to discuss 3 things with students before students began doing any work. First, we wanted teachers and students to talk together about the purpose of the assignment. There were 2 parts to that purpose. 1, what skills would the student practice by doing this assignment? And 2, what knowledge would the student gain that would benefit their long-term learning? How would those skills and that knowledge be helpful to the student beyond the context of this course in facing real-world problems in their lives? That was where we embedded the problem-centered piece. Second, we wanted teachers and students to talk before students did any work about the task at hand. What steps should students follow, and what steps might they avoid, in order to spend the bulk of their time focused on producing the highest quality work possible. Third, and finally, we asked the teachers and students to talk together before students did any work about the criteria for success. We wanted students to see not just a checklist or a rubric, but also examples of what those characteristics looked like in practice. Our research findings were encouraging. We noticed a boost to students' learning in 3 significant areas. First, students' academic confidence increased. Second, there was an increase to their sense of belonging in college. And third, students became more aware of the skills that they were developing during the course. Those first 2 findings, the boost to academic confidence and to sense of belonging, were very significant because other researchers like Walton and Cohn in the 2011 Science magazine publication demonstrated that with increased confidence and sense of belonging, students' persistence increased, as did their grades. The way that looks in this chart represents all disciplines and all students during the course of this experiment. You'll see the 2 groups, the less transparent and the more transparent. What I call attention to here in this chart is the effect sizes, or the ES values in the middle of the chart. In education research, we hope for an ES, or an effect size, of about 0.25 or greater to be considered important and publishable. In this case, our effect sizes were well beyond that cutoff point and approaching medium in size. If 0.25 is significant but small, 0.5 is considered a medium magnitude of effect, and around 0.8 is a large difference, a large magnitude of effect. For all students, we saw an effect size between small and medium in range. Our baseline equivalence test showed us that no students were any more likely than other students in our test group to succeed, starting out at the beginning of term. And when we look at the underserved students in our study group, first-generation students here, for example, we noticed even larger differences, even greater benefits. And for all sets of underserved students, we noticed this trend, this offering of transparent instruction around the purposes, tasks, and criteria for work before the students do the work. This has a beneficial and statistically significant impact for all students in the study, with an even greater degree of benefit for the underserved students. This is a kind of intervention that levels the playing field of opportunity for all college students to succeed. Again, this was the template that we asked the teachers to use in our study. And importantly, we asked those teachers to use this in their own way, at their own discretion, in a way that would fit comfortably with their own teaching styles. We didn't demand any specific way of implementing the template. We just encouraged faculty to use it as a framework for conversations with students, whether those conversations were on-site or online, written down or spoken. For most of the teachers in our study, they began with assignments that contained what looked like just the task portion of the assignment, the steps that students would follow to do the work. So for a lot of our teachers, the change from less transparent to more transparent simply involved the addition of a purpose statement at the beginning of that task and a criteria statement with some examples of actual real-world work at the end of that task description. We encourage you to click below on the assignment summaries. This is where faculty participants in our study described the effort it took and the kinds of details that they changed in order to transform their assignments in this way to make them more transparent and more problem-centered. You can also check out articles by the participants about their experience in this study. These are published in the spring 2016 issue of Peer Review, the AAC&U's journal, which was also supported by the grant from TG Philanthropy. Finally, you can look to the Tilt Higher Ed website for examples of further assignments, guidelines and templates, and even slides and webinars that you could share with faculty at your home institution. You can use these resources to create transparent, problem-centered assignments that provide more equitable opportunities for all college students to succeed.
All right, so I'm just going to turn it over to Brad and let him drill a little bit deeper into how he used some of these techniques and how things are going for him this spring. having heard about and done a little bit of digging about tilt methodology a couple months ago. So Brad, the floor is yours.
All right. I'm in the Department of Physics and Astronomy, and I teach both those subjects. But since I know some computing, they've recruited me to teach CNMT 101 in the computing department. And so, being a kind of self-taught in coding, and that's what that class is predominantly about. I kind of created whatever that particular class was. And what I noticed my first couple semesters teaching it, when I would use Canvas, like the first semester, I would just grade their assignments. And then the second semester, I said, I should probably put a rubric on Canvas because I don't really have hard deadlines, and it helps me remember what I'm supposed to be grading rather than looking at the assignment and go, hey, 10 out of 10, great job. But then that like second and third semester, I started realizing I'm the only one that looks at the rubric, because although the assignment asks for all of these things, the students aren't necessarily giving me those things. And so one of the simple things I noticed students weren't doing is when they do a coding assignment, kind of like in the past when I was a student, you would turn your code in on a sheet of paper and your professor would kind of grade it. But, now they could load it up electronically and I could run it. But I've learned in the past in my other classes that just takes too much time for me because their editor may or may not be like mine was. So what I have them do is they run it on their computer, use a screen recorder, submit the video, and they submit the code. But what I noticed before in the rubric, I give them 2 out of 10 points just for submitting those two things, even if they're wrong. And people weren't submitting them. I'm constantly, messaging them through Canvas that, oh, you need to submit this. You lost a point. So that was part of my motivation for using this tilt is just, start out putting the rubric on the front page. And I was happy to say, I show them, I said, you get 2 out of 10 points just for submitting this work, if it's correct or not. And then I kind of show them what the rest of the rubric is. And admittedly, when you make a rubric, as an instructor, there's kind of a lot of hidden information in it. But this was their first assignment, and I wanted them to get the easy points, so the low-hanging fruit. And it seems that just spending this extra 3 minutes in class on that particular part in the criteria has kind of saved me time of just messaging people of what to submit and what not to submit. But for the couple assignments in that class where I've used it, maybe about 4 assignments, I haven't had to modify my assignments a ton, because like the video said, there's, usually you have the task right there. And in most of my assignments, I always have learning objectives, which are really drilled down to what skills they're supposed to use. So, in coding, you're learning how to concatenate strings, and that's one learning objective in these different ways you can do it. And so that's part of the purpose. So I just cross off learning objective and generally put skills there. And then the other thing you're supposed to do is under the purpose of the knowledge, of just, to me, kind of either the motivation or the long-term application that you might have. And for me, that's always kind of the hardest part to figure out what to write on that, because sometimes, like we're learning loops or something, you use it in almost like every single program. I don't quite know exactly what to say on it, but some of them, there's just very applicable things within my field of. I told them one assignment, I said, we're doing this assignment because I went to the internet and it said, what's your phone number? And I'm like, what format am I supposed to put? Am I supposed to use dashes, spaces? And so this becomes one of their assignments. That's their knowledge that, in the back end, there's something that reformats whatever you type into whatever the computer would really like. And then kind of the way I modified it is the tasks. I try to keep kind of the tilt stuff to one page, the purpose, the task and the criteria just to the front page of the assignment, I'd just have a couple sentences, big picture of what we're trying to do in the assignment. So everything's in the front. And the other thing I noticed is kind of in this format, I probably spend a little longer talking about what the assignment is, because you have to go through the learning objectives, a little background on the knowledge, a little bit about the task and what their criteria is. So I've noticed that has helped. I've spent more time on that. But I think the criteria was probably the biggest help to my students. And then I also teach a 300 level computing class in physics, and they do projects and give presentations. And the hard part about giving an oral presentation for the students is to know what level of detail to go in. They usually hit one of two extremes. They tell you every thought that they've ever had on the subject, or they give you one sentence. And everyone that I talk to, like in my department, says, and I'm sure you all know, it's just a thing of experience. You sort of figure it out. So in kind of combination, I'm our assessment coordinator for the department. We did oral communication. Is one of the things I said I would do is give them videos that former students have done, and they have their grading rubric for oral presentation that they're supposed to grade the student. So we went through one together in class. And so, on the criteria, I was asking them, how did they do on the physics portion? But the criteria, I said, well, this is what a poor response would be, because this is what all students do in the past. Oh, they did a good job. Well, that tells me nothing, but an excellent response would be it's well organized, logically flowed. They showed you the 3 major steps in it. And so then we talked about this video we watched, and I purposely picked a video I thought was superb. It was like, no question, A+. And these students are like, well, she didn't do this, she didn't do that, she should add more this. And then one student stopped and said, hold it. If we're this tough on ourselves, we'll never get above a C. And then I thought that was a success right there, because it showed them, to think a little more critically, which they were, but, you can't be completely brutal about it. And so those are kind of 2 assignments that I've used them on, but I thought just when I observed they're a success, spend a half an hour kind of reformatting the front page of my assignments, but I found it to be useful. So I think that's about all that I have right now. Any questions? Comments, thoughts?
Brad, oh, go ahead, Yvonne.
Thank you. I just had a question about, on the other side of this are your students. And I was just curious, what was your students' response to you introducing these 2 assignments? Was it, oh no, we're going to do something that's kind of out of our comfort zone? How is he going to grade us? Or is this something that they just kind of jumped in, or they just in the middle, just wanted to wait and see?
I mean, these are just regular, like in my 100 level computing class, it's just an assignment that I had before that I just kind of put the front end on it of talking a little more about the purpose and the criteria. And it was the first assignment. So, I was just trying to set the stage of, this is what you have to turn in. I'll have this thing called a rubric. And then later on, we went through, okay, how do you go and find the rubric and my comments? And so I think that just kind of set for them what I wanted to do. And then the other class, I just kind of told them what I told you. I was like, it's hard to give a presentation and know what to put in it. So we only have time for 3 presentations in class. So you're going to watch 3 more, and you'll have, essentially the experience of doing another presentation by thinking about it. And, I said, this is in graduate school. When we went to a conference, this is what we did. We listened to each other's presentations, and then we critiqued them. And then you end up applying it to your own, because that's how you learn about it. But I can't spend another 3 hours in a week, with another presentation assignment. So they seem to do okay.
One thing I would just add to that, Brad, and I don't know if this has been your experience, so I also have done some tilting in some of my courses. And I find that students often, when the expectations aren't clear, and even if it's as simple as they understand the instructions, but again, they're unclear about the level of detail they need to provide, for example, that is really paralyzing for them. And so my students have really expressed to me that they appreciate those examples, like what you talked about, Brad, of having an example that kind of shows them the level of detail and the level of clarity, because it provides them with sort of that, again, they know the content, they're struggling with figuring out what you want, right? And so by providing them with some examples that show them, you know, and like for this semester, I mean, I had to create those. It was a new assignment, so I didn't have one I could share with them. Not only did it really help me as an instructor to think about what do I really want from my students, what level of detail am I really looking for? It was super helpful for me as I designed it, but the students told me that they really appreciated it, because some of them were like, yeah, I would have given you way more information. I would have done way more than I needed to. And so the feedback I've gotten has been really, they really appreciate that piece of it, is what my students have shared with me. So I don't know if that was your experience too, Brad.
Somewhat. I was just thinking from what you said, it's sort of like being here on some new committee here at the, you know, some faculty committee, and they ask you to write something up, and then you take someone to the side. Okay, how long should this really be? Is it a paragraph, a page, 5 pages? You know, just simply setting the expectation of how much it should be. I think, like you said, it's comforting to some students.
Susan, go ahead. Sure.
Did you call me, Andrew?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you said go ahead. I just wanted to thank Brad for sharing those examples. One of the things that we do in class is share examples with students, and it's so helpful. And we use a technique called tweak, trash, and treasure. So as they're looking at samples, we look at things that I think are terrible, like just trash that part of it. Something that they treasure is, this is so good, I should put this in my own work. And then a thing that it's okay, but it needs some tweaking. And having them do that multiple times has really changed the level of work that they've done. And again, gives them a better sense of what is it I'm supposed to be doing. So if they can evaluate someone else's, it helps them bring that more to their internal work as well. So I really appreciate that you're doing those kinds of things in your class.
Thanks. I wrote that a note down about it, and it just made me think I should send my students off in pairs, and they give their oral presentations to each other and then to the class the next day.
Yeah. I mean, this is so interesting to hear how these practices are being applied. You know, I think about first year students in the first semester and how they're sponges to the degree that we can provide the who, what, where, when, how, and why. Again, it makes our work easier, but it also, they walk away going, I understand how to do an assignment now. And who, again, we have a large first generation population, but they're all new. It doesn't matter whether they're first gen or not. They're all new to college. And to the degree that we can make those unknown hidden things transparent to them and help them, this generation too, developmentally, I'm a psychologist by training, and this generation needs the structure. They really thrive in that way, to get the different pieces explained to them, to know the expectations of how they're going to be judged, to get examples of good work, and even see examples of not so good work. And I love how this whole evaluation of something that, how might this change? And how did this person not meet these expectations? And they get it. And I know a lot in first year seminars, I would always work with the other faculty to say, how are you getting the students to take this and transfer it to their other classes? If not everyone gives you this information, How do you go about getting it? You have to be assertive and ask those questions. Not everybody's going to do it the way that I'm doing. So seminars, a lot of the philosophy is it prepares you for, it's a template for how to college in other areas. And so in some ways it gave a name to things that I picked up over 30 years. And boy, I wish I'd known this stuff when I started out. But on the other hand, it's very rewarding that it knows that I know that it has a name in some respects, and there's still things that I can do better and pick up along the way that I'm not transparent on. The other thing I'll say, because I see some individuals who have staff roles here, is that when I first heard about Tilt, I wrote to Erin, I was like, oh my gosh, blah, 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 blah. And I wrote to my supervisor, Gretel Stock, the Dean of University College, you can tilt programs, you can tilt Welcome Week, you can tilt the entire first year experience. You just need to give it a name. And what do we expect of our students? Why are we doing what we're doing? Why do we expect you to go out and make friends? Why do we expect you to join things? Why do we expect you to get involved with a faculty member doing stuff in your college? What's the why? How is it going to help you? So that's where my brain goes strategically. That's I always get 5 steps ahead. It's just thinking bigger picture in my role, framing the entire process for a student coming in the front door. They know what we want them to get involved in and why, the skills it's going to build. So I'm sitting here going, the spaces I'm in, how can we develop really large scale activities and programs and things? And as we think about, and I think about supporting others around campus in their work, this really resonates in terms of being transparent. Oh gosh, you got to go to Welcome Week. But when they understand, why we're requiring convocation, why we're requiring interaction with your college, and they know the why of it. So we're thinking about adding a session at the beginning of Welcome Week to be transparent and explain some things and what you're going to get out of it, what's in it for you, why it's important, and why we value you. So my little reflection on what's to come. So I'll stop there.
Dave, I think you were going to say something earlier. Did you want to share?
Well, I had a question for Brad, just in terms of how he came to, because the one thing I think about from either my own teaching or other faculty I talk to is just that there is so much content to carry, right, in terms of trying to get through in a curriculum. And so how did he come to his own perception of the value of taking the time to do this? Or how do we translate that effectively for other faculty so that this isn't something that is just like, oh, another thing that I've got to do, or that it's going to come at a cost to curriculum content?
Well, I was kind of trained a long time ago. I forgot when Siddle first started, I forgot what her name was, but I went to some workshop about learning objectives, and I started writing them on all my assignments because it really organized it in my head of exactly why we were doing this. And so I saw, Andy presented this tilt method, and I'm like, well, it kind of gives the motivation of why you would want to do this besides just completing the assignment. And then kind of what I said in my one class about the criteria is like, I want you to be thinking about what you're supposed to hand in, because some people just do it and I can't tell if they did it right. And I tell them, I said, if you're in the coding world, if your client wants you to make the game pink, you better make it pink, even if you don't like pink, partly that's what you're getting used to. You have to give the boss what they want. So part of it was the why, and the other part was kind of streamlining my own grading in the end and having them look to see how to find their feedback and what it should all mean. And I usually just mostly do it on when we have computer assignments, they do coding in class. So it takes a little time away from their coding, but it hasn't really taken away any of the assignments that I've given them.
One thing, as a chemist, I feel that content pressure a lot, Dave, and one of the things that I've started parroting, I think my chemistry colleagues are about ready to punch me, is content covered is not the same as content learned, right? So I can cram all the content in that I want, but at the end of the day, if my students aren't learning it, then it's not valuable. And I think a lot of my colleagues, they think a lot about grades. They don't think a lot about assessment, right? And those are not necessarily synonymous. And so having the conversation about, okay, you told me that you have this grade distribution and your average is a C, but like, what does that mean in terms of student learning? What can a C student do? What learning outcomes have they met, right? And so really trying to focus it more on what are the students getting out of it, and just sort of asking pointed questions about, if by not covering it, this topic that you love, right, that all of your students will end your course being able to do this fundamental thing, right? Is that trade-off worth it? And trying to phrase it kind of that way. And then also the faculty buy-in piece, to Brad's point, about just because I have had faculty who feel like it's too much work up front to do this. And so from my experience, like I more than make up that time in grading, because again, I'm not getting garbage and getting good assignments. I'm writing less feedback. And so I definitely have not convinced all of my colleagues that they can get rid of some content, but that's the tact I've taken, is just because you cover it doesn't mean they're learning it. So do you care about what you've covered, or do you care about what the students learn? And it at least has opened up interesting conversations. So I don't know if that's helpful. Take it for what it's worth, but yes, Susan, it is much faster to evaluate quality work. And one other thing that I'll just throw out there, because I thought of this when Brad was talking, are any of you familiar with the concept of, I've heard them called gateway criteria. So this is where, again, things like, for example, did you submit both parts of the assignment, right? Like in that gateway model, as opposed to assigning points to that, it just becomes an automatic, I'm not grading this. You haven't actually submitted the assignment. And so in Canvas, you now have the option to reassign things to students, which makes this a lot easier to do. But again, within this framework, you can lay out the gateway criteria of, you must upload this and this, right? And so then as an instructor, your first passes are both of those things there. If not, you just hit the reassign button and you send it back to the student. And so again, that's another way that you can, depending on what those criteria are, sort of enforce compliance, I guess. And again, the key there is making it not be punitive and not, giving them the opportunity to fix it, right? It can't just be you didn't get this, you get a 0 on the assignment. But if you can work that in, it can be another really helpful thing to do. Other thoughts or questions that you guys have for Brad, or things you have done to increase transparency in your classes that you want to share?
I could just volunteer one thing. My daughter's, she's in graduate school in mechanical engineering, so she's a TA for some class. And I thought it was interesting. She told me in terms of what the expected criteria is, they have a specific format that they get graded on what their solutions should look like. And it's worth 70% of the points, because they're trying to get them to move from novice problem solvers to more of an expert status. And so I was thinking that kind of fits under the criteria.
I'd be interested how the students respond to that. That's a whole separate conversation, but yes, Sally.
One of the things that I like to do every now and again is to just ask the students, why do you think we're doing this? And how does this relate to the rest of the class? Because they know. I mean, once you start doing this and you're explaining it to them, they can tell you why. And I think that's just really cool, because sometimes they come up with things and I go, oh, something I didn't think about or how they're going to apply it. And of course, I have a very small class, but I like doing that because, they do know, and then they themselves are making that connection. And I do that later on in the semester, but it's fun.
Thanks, Sally. All right, any last minute thoughts? We've got 2 minutes left. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you learned something valuable and enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.